There's new heat on Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito. Revelations that the symbol of this so-called, quote, stop the steal movement, an upside-down flag, was flown outside his house for days in the key period after the insurrection. Just as many people now convicted of crimes flew it that way at the Capitol on January 6th itself. Now, it's a grave scandal if Justice Alito witnessed the violence of January 6th and then sought to associate with that side, or the underlying lies and conspiracy theories that fed those grievances, suggesting that Trump's legal loss, he did in fact lose, was actually some kind of conspiracy theory steal. That's a scandal for a justice who also has to oversee and rule in related cases, including of those very defendants and convicts. And it's a scandal even if he stopped short of officially supporting criminal violence. The New York Times broke this story, which raises questions about whether Justice Alito can even rule on these cases and whether his possible public support, you see the flag there on the right, of these crimes against the United States also make him unfit to serve on the court at all. Justice Alito now can see this is at a minimum a bad look. He's responding by distancing himself from the flying of the flag of the lying movement at the heart of January 6th. So before I show you his new statement, I want to be clear. He's not claiming that he could just fly the flag as a matter of free speech. He's not elaborating on where he stands on the lies associated with flying the flag that way, claiming a steal. He is instead suggesting that the flag flew over his own home for days as a kind of separate family decision that was made without him. He now asserts, and he didn't say this under oath, but he said it, that his story is that his wife independently flew the flag over his home, and that while he lives there, he was not in any way involved in that decision. The statement says, I had no involvement whatsoever in the flying of the flag. It was briefly placed by Mrs. Alito in response to a neighbor's use of objectionable and personally insulting language on yard signs, end quote. This is, and I say this respectfully, an unacceptable, silly, and possibly misleading statement by a sitting member of the Supreme Court. It is not, for example, what the court accepts when defendants and lawyers submit material to the court. The idea that a random civilian saying something somewhere would then justify an otherwise questionable or unacceptable association with the January 6th violence in that key week is an explanation so thin that it's hard to follow, or worse, it sounds misleading. The inverted flag does not fly anymore over Alito's home. The court is presiding over two related cases, and the court has this ethics code that was recently promulgated precisely over these kinds of problems. It says justices must disqualify themselves, recuse from cases, if their impartiality might reasonably be questioned. The court was pushed into that ethics code because of Justice Alito, along with Justice Thomas, who have been taking huge benefits, sums of money, transferred to them through sometimes secret, uber-rich vacations from people who have business on the court and who they met because of their lobbying for the court. In other words, it is worse than it even looks. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito under pressure here over reports that he was seen flying this flag of Stop the Steal over his house. Jason Johnson's with us. We've fixed our technical difficulties. Welcome back. Your thoughts as you were explaining this issue.
Yeah, all right. The larger issue here is not that you have another Supreme Court justice who appears to be compromised. We had these issues all last summer with the ProPublica articles about Clarence Thomas, about the involvement of Ginny Thomas. It's not just about the lying by Alito, this idea that there was a flag being flown upside down at his house and he had no idea and his wife did it. It's not that. It's the fact that Dick Durbin, who is in charge of oversight, it's the fact that the President of the United States, it's the fact that Democrats and even-minded Republicans are not screaming about the absolute need for legislation to require and rein in the Supreme Court. This is a problem. These people are not just nonpartisan, they are active partisans in a movement to violently overthrow the government. This isn't just a difference of opinion. All right, this is what I was saying before. If somebody had put up a sign that said, F the police, your response could be, I support the blue. Your response could be, I believe in law enforcement. Your response shouldn't be, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor deserved it. And that is essentially what's being said here, right? So we have to be in a situation where our justices can at least present the patina that they're objective. And if they can't do that, they shouldn't be sitting on the court, and other legislators should be calling for them to be reformed or recused or kicked off.
Yeah, it's a huge revelation. We have, again, the imagery up. And this is a very public, angry, and I use this word literally, disloyal display against the United States, the peaceful transfer of power, the rule of law. And at the time, the majority of the justices, including, I should mention, some Republican appointees, had rejected taking the conspiracy theory cases. And they rejected them for good reason. There wasn't close evidence. It wasn't Bush v. Gore, 500 votes in Florida. It was a blowout. And there hadn't been marshaled any evidence. So while they rejected, I want to read here from the New York Times, while that flag was up, the court was contending with whether to hear a final 2020 election case. Justice Alito on the losing end of the decision to not hear those cases. Should he be viewed as someone who publicly affiliated with the Stop the Steal movement and thus is minimizing or softly supporting the premise of the violent effort to overthrow the government? And if so, is he fit to be on the court, Jason?
No, he isn't. He isn't. And this is, all right, I'll be even more specific here. This is supporting terrorism. This is not just an ideological opinion. This is not Roe versus Wade. You are supporting terrorism. He is supporting the violent overthrow of the government. And it's ridiculous at this point. If we can hold justices accountable for the financial dealings of their spouses, it is absolutely ridiculous for us to assume that they're not aware of and in tacit support of changing the decorations outside of their own homes. It is insane for us to think that. And the President of the United States and Democrats and like-minded Republicans need to be calling this out before this hearing actually occurs. So should someone like Alito scuttle actual justice, the nation is prepared for the dishonesty.
Yeah, I think it's very clear legally. He has to explain this further. It's a question for him and the Chief Justice. Alito has to go under oath. He has to explain what was being done at his house in the wake of that violence with those police officers and others being attacked, some of them dying. He has to explain why there's so much intrigue around whether he or someone he knows leaked his draft opinion to the Supreme Court. That was a Justice Alito draft. Yeah. These are open questions. They didn't put the justices under oath in that investigation. It's more than a double standard. It's a question of whether we have people who self-identify as enemies of democracy on the court. It's his family flag. It's his house. This isn't someone else putting it up. Jason, I went to you. I want to mention, for clarity, we didn't want a legal ethicist because these questions right now are bigger than checking the footnotes of their own ethics code, but more, I think, the clarity you brought. So thank you, and we will be right back.